sista av igår. Vi är de första av imorgon. Vi ska läka moder Sveas sår. Vi är de första av imorgon. Vi är ej de sista av igår. Vi är de första av imorgon. Likt ett brödraskap av stål. Vi är de första av imorgon. Vi är de sista av igår. Vi är de första av imorgon. Likt ett brödraskap av stål. Vi är de första av imorgon.
Hello and welcome to this live stream from the Free Sweden, the Fria Sverige. This is usually done in Swedish, but this time we will be speaking English, and there's a good reason for that. My name is Dan Eriksson, and with me as always is Magnus Söderman. Use your best English.
Yeah, hello there everybody, welcome. Now we do it in English for a while.
Yeah, the first hour will be in English, the second hour will be in Swedish. The reason we are doing this is, of course, that we have a special guest who was supposed to be an even more special guest this weekend at our Sommarfest. We had a very successful event with around 150 people in our house in Elgarås in Skaraborg in Sweden. It's probably the least political event of the year. It's a Sommarfest filled with games, fun, laughter. And it's usually the highlight of the year for many of us, and it was this year as well. But on Friday, Mark Collett, who is with us now, was supposed to come to Sweden. He did land in Sweden, but after that he was not allowed into the country. So Mark, we will talk about this, but first, how are you now? Are you okay?
I'm fine now. I mean, I got back on Saturday in a decent time because of the way the time zones work. And my plane actually, strangely enough, they gave me a great seat on the plane back and the plane landed early. I got back to Manchester. I was straight through customs, thankfully. Got a really nice early train back home. There was a couple of delays actually, but I was still home before 11 p.m, which didn't feel too bad. But it had been such a hectic weekend. It didn't all really sort of hit me until later on Sunday. I didn't have a lie on Sunday morning. I was up at sort of 7 p.m. Sunday morning, 7 a.m. Sunday morning. It was this morning when I felt really tired and everything finally caught up with me. But the return journey was actually pretty painless. And because they gave me a seat at the front of the plane, and because the plane arrived early, I did manage to get home, on the Saturday, which was very good. What would have really ruined it is if there'd been any delays and I've ended up having to sleep in Manchester airport and come back the Sunday. That would have been a step too far.
Yeah. I mean, after how they treated you for, 28 hours, a good seat in the plane is the least that they could do, I guess. So I know that many people follow you on Telegram, and you were on Red Eyes from the airport, so you have told parts of the story already. We were looking into doing like an extra live stream, but we were such a small team working with the event, and it was really hard to get things to work. So we are happy to be able to do this now. But just explain what happened when you arrived in Sweden.
Well, when I arrived in Sweden, sort of everything felt slightly weird because I'd had a bit of a battle getting there. My train was cancelled. There was holdups at the airport in the UK. And it almost felt like everything was going against me before I even landed. And when I came off the plane, there was two large police officers who were stood monitoring people coming off the plane. Now, that to me was strange because you don't usually see that. I thought, well, are they here for me, or is this something that happens in Sweden? Hasn't happened. I haven't noticed that before when I was coming into Sweden. Haven't noticed when I went to Finland multiple times. haven't noticed that when I went to Denmark or Holland. This seemed a little bit strange. So I was like, yeah, this is not a good sign. But they didn't stop me or anything. And I got in the queue for the passports and I started queuing. And I'd been queuing there for a couple of minutes when a black officer and a white woman, a white female officer, so it was a black male officer and a white female officer, came over and asked me to step out. And at that point, I thought, here we go. And from there, it began. And at that point, I pretty much knew what was going to happen there. I went through my usual thing. And they actually claimed I was lying, which was really strange because I said, look, I'm here to see friends. I'm here for sort of a community social gathering. They said, what kind of thing goes on at this? I said, well, there's families there, there's food. I'm going for a meal Friday night. And they later tried to claim this was all lies and it was this sort of hardcore sort of political training event that I'd misled them on. When I said, look, this is a family gathering, he said, what do you do when you're at these places? Well, you socialize, you meet people, you eat, there's sort of physical activities, exercises, games, the sort of thing that'd be at any sort of summer festival. They were not having that. They didn't like that. They were very, very sort of desperate to paint this almost as if it was some kind of like hardcore paramilitary event, which obviously it isn't, and then paint me as a liar for not stating that that's what it is. And when they said, oh, what are you making a speech at this event? I said, well, yeah, I'm making an address. And they asked me about the speech. I said, why didn't you mention the speech straight away? Well, firstly, you never asked me about the speech. Secondly, you said, why am I here? And my speech was only sort of 25, 30 minutes, very small amount of my time in Sweden was going to be spent doing anything like that. Obviously, Friday night it's social. Most of Saturday it's social. Flying back Sunday. And I made it very clear, like I always do when I'm visiting a foreign country, where I'm staying, who my contacts are, who's picking me up, returning me to the airport, where I'm flying from, where I'm booked into, because these are all the things that I've got enough money to be there, that I've got a contact back in Britain, that I've got contacts in Sweden, so I can prove that I'm both arriving and leaving. But I think everything they did to me was pre-prepared. They knew I was coming. They were waiting for me at the border. They had a judgment ready. They just wanted to go through the motions, make it look like there was some kind of due process, which there wasn't. And then they hit me with this big 15-year ban.
Yeah, I one thing that makes me believe the same thing as you, that it was planned and everything is more or less about harassing, scaring, trying to show others that you are not welcome in Sweden, other people, and so on, is the fact that also you were, the decision was made at 1300 hours, I think, but you were still not let out to the terminal or to the flights or anything until 2 hours later, which made your connecting flight back to Manchester had already gone. So they did this knowing that now he will stay 20 hours or more in the terminal. And it's not fun to live in a terminal. It's not. So this was a way to put more burden on what is happening, and it's harassment. That is what it is. It's no talk about that.
Well, I felt when I was there, I've got to make it clear, no one was physically menacing to me. Some of the officers were very friendly. The people at baggage claim were very friendly, but the orders coming from those above were to make it as difficult for me as possible. And they did this in numerous ways. The first way was to deny me my luggage. So when you're traveling from the UK, you can't carry things like liquids, fluids, etc., gels inside your carry-on luggage. You're meant to carry them in your stowed luggage. You can, but you have to have them in tiny little bottles and containers. So I always carry them in my stowed luggage. So that meant I didn't have any toothpaste, I didn't have any shower gel, I didn't have my toothbrush. So all of that was a major inconvenience. Also, I had warmer clothes, changes of clothes, etc. I couldn't access any of those. So I couldn't clean myself, I couldn't do my teeth, I couldn't change my clothes or anything like that, to wear the same socks for like 42 hours, which was, obviously one thing they did to mess me up. Also, my travel chargers, adapters were in my luggage because I didn't think I'd need them there. So all I could charge my phone with was a USB cable, which meant that took forever. to charge up my phone because those things are so slow when they're not charged in, when they're not plugged into proper mains. That was really, really irritating. And they also withheld my passport and didn't give me any information. So that left me in a very sort of stressed situation. They said, "Oh, you know, we'll do our best to arrange a flight back for you. You can book one if you want." Well, how can I book a flight back if I don't have a passport? Even if I, you know, managed to book a flight with my phone or got somebody else to book me a flight, and even if I did remember all my passport details, I couldn't board a plane. So I was trapped. I was at their mercy. They were very sort of funny with me, like, "Oh, well, you know, you're welcome to book a flight and leave, you know, however you want, or we'll get one for you." Well, I can't do that. I'm literally trapped here. And because they withheld my passport, because they had, you know, the boarding passes for me, because they made sure that I couldn't access my luggage, it was an uncomfortable stay. And you've got to remember, I had to stay in that area. It was 25 hours without them providing me with any food, any water, without my baggage, without my passport, and without any knowledge of what was going to happen to me. We literally had to sort of just guess which flight we thought it would be, and we guessed correctly. And when they came to, you know, march me to the gate and board me, because the officers actually took me down onto the plane, made sure I got on the plane. You know, you're not just given your passport back and sent on your way. They are very, very thorough at making sure you get on the plane. I've got to admit, the two people who boarded me, a lady and a man, both of whom were white, were very friendly. They were people that were very personable. They were talking to me about my family, having a bit of a laugh with me. They were laughing at my jokes, you know, and it was okay. You know, they were okay. But what they were doing to me was part of a serious high-level harassment campaign to try and make my weekend so difficult that it would make an example to anyone who holds the wrong opinions not to travel to Europe.
Yeah, without a doubt. And the fact that they also slammed you with this 15-year. I mean, this is, when I heard that, it was like that they stopped you and sent you back. Okay, I know the game, the rules of the game. This is something we always have to take into account when we travel. I mean, if you are a spokesperson for this thing we are doing, of course, this can happen. But 15 years, Mark, banned from entering the EU. This is, I mean, top level criminals don't get this kind of bans. I mean, sexual predators don't get this kind of ban. They have, as people are writing in the chat, Somali rapists or whatever, you know, they get 5 years or 2 years or no years. You get 15 years. And I mean, when you read the motivation, it's like they can't believe this themselves. The core values of Sweden. I mean, come on now. It's upsetting, actually. Yeah, it's upsetting to read it.
Well, I found it incredible because here in the UK, we're constantly hearing stories about how people who have got no claim to be in Britain, no claim to be in Europe, they're not of European descent, they have no ancestral ties to either Britain or to any British colony or to any European country, are given rights and afforded privileges which are far above and beyond anything I was afforded at the weekend, which is absolutely crazy. And these people are often people who've committed serious criminal acts, sometimes sexual offenses, sometimes violent offenses, sometimes both, and they are treated with dignity. As soon as anybody arrests them or tries to bring them before a court, there's a queue of human rights lawyers, legal professionals waiting to represent them, fighting for their rights. There was literally no one fighting for my rights. There was no one. I was not offered legal representation. I was told, you know, I was given a small piece of card that I had to read. There was a translator on the phone. It was all done in a way to make me feel as isolated and uncomfortable as possible. And I tried to keep smiling all the way through. But what you've got to remember is, if I'd have been brown and if I'd have committed a crime And if I was there illegally without any papers, I'd have probably been taken off and put in a 4 or 5 star hotel where I could have wandered around Stockholm or whatever city I'd been placed in. But because I am white and because I stand for the rights and well-being of people of European descent, I was treated in the most appalling manner possible. And this again highlights something which has become part of the mainstream conversation now: two-tier justice. We are treated less because we are white. We are treated worse because we are white. We are worse off than second-class citizens now.
Yeah, and we had the person who was picking you up. He was at the airport when we heard about these problems. He went into the terminal. He tried to establish contact with the border police. He showed, this is me. I'm here for Mark. This is my name and personal security number and everything. You know, trying to, what is happening? Can I get a message through? And they were like, we don't know. We will see what happens. They didn't care at all. As you said, if you had some human rights left-wing woke oi polloi standing there, it would be a whole other thing, you know. So yeah, it's really two-tier system, and it's they should be ashamed.
During the interrogation, were they asking also like political questions, or was it only about your travel here?
Everything. They wanted to know about my wife and children. They wanted to know my financial situation. They wanted to know about what I do in the UK. They wanted to know about my political history, whether I'd ever been arrested. They wanted to know about my ex-girlfriend. They showed me pictures of my ex-girlfriend and was like, who's she? You know, I was like, you know, the whole thing was done obviously with real malice and real planning. They knew what they were doing. They wanted to make me feel uncomfortable. And obviously, when you're in these situations, you are compelled to answer. But because of the feelings that you have in this situation, so they're trying to menace you, they are trying to make you feel uncomfortable, they then use that against you as well and say, oh, you're being deceptive, you were misholding information, etc., etc. And you're like, well, look, I answered your questions directly, but in a situation like that, when you're surrounded by people being humiliated and strong-armed and bullied, having your passport taken, when you're a law-abiding citizen, there on actual business that you can prove with a return ticket, etc., and you're being treated like that, you know, they don't take into account how you feel in that situation. You know, they use this air of menace to essentially back you into a corner and then try to turn everything against you. You know, they really, really do want to stitch you up. And I think this is going to become more and more common, not just for people like myself who are quite high up, but for people who are just, you know, posted things on social media. One of the things they asked was like, you know, where is your Facebook? We want to look through your Facebook. We want to look through your Instagram. Do you know, which social networks do you post your opinions on? You know, that's where this is going.
We saw that also. There is a kind of documentary series in Swedish television about the border patrol and their work. You know, this kind of documentary series, and from this last winter now, they came a show and they showed how some members of Active Club in Estonia are visiting Sweden, and then you can hear how the border patrol talk to each other as they have these young guys, and they are talking about, these are like right-wing extremists, we have to stop them from entering, they have no place in Sweden. You know, talking to each other, we must find something to build a case. And this is what they were doing to you also, like, who is this, and why didn't you say that, and who's this woman, and what's your everything, to build a case against you. And as we know, if they want to, I mean, they can find whatever and build this case. But this is really, and you could see in this documentary the smirk on the face of the I think he's some kind of a boss there, about how to get these guys out from Sweden. So this is how they are talking to each other. It is political, Mark. It is political, and they are more or less activists for this system that we live under.
And they did lots of little things as well, which were designed to send a message. So the guy who pulled me out of the queue, he was a black man, very, very African looking. He was paired with a Swedish blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman who looked like a model. That was obviously to send me this message that, you know, Sweden was this harmonious place where black men come and work with white women to protect the fabric of Swedish society. Because that's what they said. You know, I was a threat to public order, to the fundamental fabric of society, and to the values on which Sweden and the EU were built. And when they actually said the thing about the fabric of society, whether that was a mistranslation, because obviously there was a translator working on the phone, I mean, to be labeled as a threat to the very fabric of society is insane. They use terms like, you know, I was a danger because I was interested in setting up parallel societies, because I wanted Swedish people to break away from their government and create their own communities. This is what they fear the most. What they fear the most is white people doing the same as ethnic minorities. So ethnic minorities, they cluster together, they work as a group, they live in the same area, they buy up all the institutions and the infrastructure and the buildings, they create community centers, places of worship, they create charities for their own people, and they live as an ethnic bloc. And that is smiled upon by the Swedish government, the British government, by the EU. These people get grants to do that. But if somebody says that white people should do that and build their own ethnic community and break away and control their own area, this is what they feared. They feared white people saying, we've had enough, we want to be on our own. But they also fear white people from all over Europe working together against the corrupt anti-white European Union. They fear Brits and Swedes and Germans and Spanish all getting together and saying, look, we share largely similar cultures, we've got a similar heritage, we've got similar traditions, and we're all being erased and replaced and displaced by this same corrupt anti-white power. Why don't we work together? Why don't we, you know, share our collective experiences for the good of our people and fight back? They absolutely fear that. And that's the kind of thing that they endorse for other racial groups. You know, if I'd been a Muslim speaker flying to Sweden to speak in a mosque to talk about, you know, Muslims having a greater role in society and take their destiny into their own hands, I'd have probably been fast-tracked through and given a round of applause, a police escort to my hotel. But if you're a white man saying that for white people, public enemy number one, which is essentially what I am. I've basically been designated as the most dangerous man in the whole of Europe. I am now banned from 29 countries for 15 years. I am not allowed to have a bank account. I am not allowed on any mainstream social network. I'm not allowed on YouTube. I'm not allowed on Facebook. I'm not allowed on Instagram. I'm not allowed on X. I am the most banned, deplatformed, debanked man in the whole of Europe. Yet I've never broken the law. I've never committed a crime. I have never endorsed violence. And I've only ever said we need to peacefully organize and separate. We need to create our own communities and advocate for our rights. Really, when you think about it, for the governments of Europe to be so terrified of me making a 25 or 30-minute speech, how insane is that? And to designate me such a great danger that essentially what they're saying is, you know, Europe could collapse if this man sets foot on European soil and makes a speech. I mean, that's incredible. And I'm just a normal guy. I'm a normal guy with a wife, children, you know, I like doing things like gardening, you know, going to the park. And I am being painted as a greater danger. You know, I'm sure there are less restrictions on genuine terrorists and crime bosses than there are on me.
Yeah, it is. I know from a fact that during the ISIS, the war in Syria, we had immigrants returning back home, fighting for ISIS. When they came back to Sweden, they were taken for the social care. They helped them with the driver's license. They helped them with getting jobs. They helped them with psychology. Because they got PTSD from killing women and children, so they got help for handling these things. And it was no problem for them coming back to Sweden. So you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's also the fact that you say this because the reason they are afraid of you and the reason they are afraid of our organizations and what we are doing is because we are normal. It's because we are saying, no, we don't do violence. We don't do these things. We gather, we make it better than this society we live in. And they know that we are speaking truth, because when we do something, it is better. People who were at the Sommarfest, young women being there, they could feel safe. They could feel safe with dancing and having a party, meeting people. There's no one has to be afraid of being harassed or anything like that. You have a safe, nice, white place, and this is what they fear so much, that if you say that, you are really public enemy number one to their public order, to their society, to their perverse logic. So yeah, it's a mark of honor on you.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's kind of strange because when I was coming back, my wife was sort of joking, saying, you've been painted as this absolute monster that, poses this massive threat to the whole of society, to the European Union, to Sweden, to the entire multicultural project. And the world is making you out to be this absolute monster. And she said, the thing you're worried about most is sort of coming home and having the time to sort of tend to the garden, pull the vegetables, pickle your beetroots, do these normal things. Because I'm a very normal guy. I've never been involved in any sort of criminality or violence or anything like that. I really am just an everyman. Wife, children, enjoy gardening, enjoy going out in the countryside, spend time pottering around the house. I mean, people will see the Sunday I got back, I put up on social media, what does the most dangerous man in Europe do in his free time? Well, he pickles beetroots after doing his gardening. That's what I did. And it's incredible, because I can tell you now, if I wasn't white, if I was brown, if I was, an Indian, if I was a Pakistani, if I was from Nigeria, and I'd been traveling to Sweden to make a peaceful speech, and I'd been treated like this, I am betting that every newspaper, every mainstream news agency in the whole country, when I returned to the UK, would have been waiting on hand to whisk me away, get me changed, get me sorted out, put me in front of a camera, start talking about human rights abuses. And that's the terms they would have used. They would have talked about my human rights, these inalienable rights that we all have to travel and to meet people and to freely associate. But because of who I am and because of my message, I am denied that. And and anyone that does reports on it in the mainstream in such a way as to make me look absolutely terrible. And really, our message is so simple, it's so within the law, and they know that I wasn't. If they thought I was going to break the law, and one of the police officers said this, they were very clear. You've not been arrested. You haven't broken any laws. You've not done anything wrong. And, I said to them, well, what if I'd made a break for it across the tarmac? And they laughed and they said, well, we'd have run after you. And I joked, I said, do you think you two would actually be able to catch me? And they said, oh, we have cars and dogs and tasers. And I said, well, I used to be a very, very fast distance runner in my time. And they were sort of joking with me. And they're like, oh, but that would be breaking the law. That would have been a serious thing. They said, we would have arrested you then and you would have spent time in jail. And that really underlined it. There was no arrest. There was no time in jail. There was none of this. There was just a draconian clampdown on a man engaged in completely legal activity.
So now you have this 15-year travel ban. We will of course help you with writing an appeal and so on, and hopefully we can get it. They take it back. But if the ban stands, how would that impact you and your life?
Well, I hope we can appeal it, and I'm going to write all my details for an appeal and why it should not be upheld. I'm going to prepare that for you tomorrow and send it over to you so you can give it to your lawyer so you can enter that as soon as possible. I've already sent you all the paperwork and I hope that goes through. But it will impact my life. It impacts me, but more importantly, it impacts my wife, my children. It makes me very sad that I will now never be able to take a holiday in Europe with my family. Now, we actually, I have a daughter who is 6 and I have a son who is 5 months old. Now, we don't actually believe in taking our kids abroad when they're very small. Like, air travel can actually damage children's ears. It doesn't happen to every child, and most children who fly are fine, but we don't believe it's really worth taking the risk when they're sort of, babies or toddlers. If their ears pop, it can cause damage. So we're like, well, look, we were going to wait until both our children were about, maybe 7 or 8 before we sort of traveled abroad. But obviously we would have loved to have taken them to Europe. And maybe one day, when they're a little bit older, I'd have taken a weekend abroad with the wife, had a weekend off. But, all of that is off the plate now. And that is something that is very upsetting. It's something that for me, I feel is very unfair because it's a punishment. It's a punishment, not just for me, but for my family also. And it's very, very disproportionate. You would expect a travel ban of 15 years for someone who came, committed a serious act, and was an actual threat to people, harmed people, in a way that was quantifiable. But obviously that hasn't happened. They haven't proven any case against me. There was no due process. There was no chance for me to sit and talk to a legal professional. There was no representation. It was awful. And I've got to say this as well. I really do want to thank everybody who supported me throughout this. Like, one thing that really kept my head up was so many people contacting me. So many content creators, so many people from all over the world, people like Jared Taylor, Kevin McDonald, Henrik and Lana. I can't name them all. I'm going to miss some people out, I know. Like all you guys, Marcus, the guys in Australia, Blair Cottrell, people were ringing me, they were messaging me. People were so supportive. People were sharing the information. People like Keith Woods, people like Warren Baylog. I am going to forget somebody and they're going to be offended that I didn't mention them. So if I have forgot you, I'm sorry. But there was also loads of normal people that were messaging me and contacting me. And that's something that really kept my head up. And something else that I'm really proud of, we didn't do a Tommy Robinson. We didn't bang up a fundraiser, put up a donation button. There wasn't people all over YouTube calling for a defense fund, grifting off it. We did this without, trying to turn it into something it wasn't. We did it in a dignified fashion. And I got through it thanks to the support. Obviously, my family, were great. But all the people who were contacting me and messaging me and keeping me company, that really mattered, and sharing it on social media. No Chance, that's another guy up in Scotland. He shared it a lot. All these people were so kind to me, and it really was a good feeling inside, because you're obviously trapped in there, you're all alone, you don't know what's going to happen, you're isolated, you can't go anywhere, but you've got like hundreds and hundreds of people, dozens of people contacting, hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands sharing it, reading about it, and actually tens of thousands sharing and reading about it, and that feeling just kept my head up, and I was like, yeah, this is good. I'm going to keep just battling through. And when they finally boarded me on that plane, I got on that plane with my head held high. That was something. All of this is, I'm proud. I'm really proud of the way we handled it. And, I do take it in a way as a badge of honor that my life's work is seen as such a threat to this corrupt, bureaucratic, anti-white, anti-European organization that seeks to control our lives and strip us of our freedoms. I'm pleased that, you know, so many people have got faith in me, and I'm privileged enough to be able to fight at this level for the future of our people.
Yeah, and this is very important to take with us. The fact that all these people you mentioned, they are also people traveling around, and we must travel. We shall never stop visiting each other. I mean, of course, it's not fun to be banned for 15 years. It's totally ridiculous. But this is a price that some of us maybe have to pay because we are doing these things, and we are doing it as spokespersons and not just. So we have the eyes on us, and people are. I mean, the system is following us. They are looking at what we're doing, and if we can turn this into this kind of strength that you are doing and that we're doing together now, then even if they ban us, we will still do these things. We will still have our meetings, we will have our congresses, we will have our parties. Sometimes we meet in real life, sometimes we have to be on via internet, whatever. We keep these things going, because then we show them that they can stop us, but they can't stop us. They can't do that. And these 15 years, we will do everything we can, talking with our lawyers, everything we can to make them see some kind of reason in this, if it's possible.
I think so. I'm quite positive that we can win this appeal, and so is our lawyer. So we will work on this week, and hopefully we will have some good news soon. It's funny that you mentioned Tommy Robinson. I was thinking about that maybe you should already register a domain name and start a web page before you travel, because that seems to be the modus operandi there.
Yeah, Tommy has like a load of domain names. Whatever he's doing, I think the domain names are pre-registered. So it's Save Tommy, Free Tommy, Bring Tommy Home from Canada. Wherever he goes, they have about 10 domain names pre-registered. You know, in the inevitability that he will either get completely drunk or worse and kick off, or, you know, he'll just disappear into the night. I mean, that's what happened last time we went to Canada. People arranged a series of meetings for him. He sort of disappeared, got himself into trouble. Then the domain names are activated and the money rolled in. And I'm just so proud of the genuine ethno-nationalist movement that we don't do things like that. We act with such integrity compared to these sort of civ-nat pro-Zionist grifters. And that's something that I was really proud about, because people were so kind. People were like, look, Mark, where can we send you money? The airport food's expensive. How can we help? And I'm like, look, no.
We tried to send you money as well, but you wouldn't take it. You said
exactly.
No.
I was like, don't send me money. I'm going to be fine. It's going to be like a day or so at most. That I didn't want people feeling they had to pay my way while I was buying, cheap hot dogs and cans of Coke in the airport. I will say this, though. In Sweden and Finland, you guys have these little hot dog machines in the airports. And those hot dogs are the cheapest thing they had. They were 37 Swedish krona. And they're really tasty. And there's about 6 different flavors of hot dogs. And I was actually quite enjoying trying all the hot dogs, the different sauces. Shall I have a can of Coke this time? Shall I have Red Bull? What name is going to be on my can of Coke? Because they have little Swedish names on the cans. I was like, well, you've got to make the best of a bad situation, haven't you? But the saddest thing, somebody said to me last night on a stream, the saddest thing about all this is those airport hot dogs could well be the last European cuisine I enjoyed for 15 years.
Oh, what a shame.
So, Mark, you didn't get a chance to hold your speech, but what was you supposed to speak about at our event?
Well, I was actually speaking. My speech, I've never really done a speech about sort of regrets that I've got in my life and things that I would do differently. And my speech was about my youth. It was about my youth in the British National Party. And this really, they asked me about my speech, and I told the people at Border Control about my speech. I said, it's a speech about how I regret, well, not regret, but how I look back on my time in the British National Party and the hundreds or thousands of hours and the tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of leaflets I personally distributed, and how it actually didn't achieve anything. how I fought so hard and gave everything to go down the political route. And even though I came second place in an election and got 20% of the vote, it amounts now to nothing. And I look back, and recently I went back to the area where I got 20%, and it's now almost completely ethnic minority. It's been completely taken over. And I say, look, you know, I look back on all the hard work I put in, and if I'm being honest, it was all futile. Walking down that electoral path is like going into a trap. And nationalists commit themselves almost to the sort of the definition of insanity. You know, nationalists keep doing the same thing over and over again in the same way, and then crying when nothing ever changes. And my speech was to state that what Dan is doing with the Free Sweden movement, that Dan is a visionary, that Dan is a man that people should follow, and people should believe in Dan, and people should put their faith in Dan. Because if I could go back in time, and if I had the millions of pounds that the BNP wasted on these elections, I wouldn't be spending it on leaflets and billboards and 5-minute TV adverts. You know, I would be spending it on buying a building, buying a headquarters, helping white families move to an area. And I was going to talk about how, in retrospect, all of the millions and millions and millions of pounds or millions of euros that have been spent on these elections, where we get 1% nationally, is a waste of time. Spend your money and your time and your effort building a community. And I liken these elections. I said, I actually put a quote in there, you know, a tree without roots is nothing more than a piece of wood. It can never flower. It can never blossom. It can never reproduce itself. It can never seed. It is destined to just sit there and eventually decay. But what the Free Sweden movement are doing is they are sinking roots. This is a project that can flower. This is a project that can blossom. This is a project that can be healthy and sink other seeds, and other little communities can grow up. And my speech was about doing things in a different way. And I may well record the speech at some time and put it online. It'll lose some of its fire, because speaking to the camera is so much more difficult than when you're speaking to an audience and you're getting feedback and you can hear, you know, the crowd enjoying your words and understanding what you're saying. But it is an important message, you know, that we have, as an international community, put our faith in the system's rigged game. And you can see how rigged elections are just by looking at the UK. So it looks like Labour's going to lose the next general election. It looks like Nigel Farage is going to win the next election. So what do Labour do? Well, they change the way that we'll vote in mayoral elections so that no more Reform Party mayors can be elected. And now they're letting 16-year-olds vote. Because when you look at the demographics of 16 to 18-year-olds, it's one of the most diverse, left-wing, pro-ethnic demographics in Britain. And Labour have done extensive polling to show that 16-year-olds vote for Reform the least and Labour the most. So what they're saying is, hey, look, we might lose the next general election. So let's let a load of people who are not allowed to vote because they're most likely to vote for us. And this tells you how rigged the system is. As soon as the system thinks it might not get the result it wants, it changes the rules. And we have no power to act over that. But if we have a closed ethno-community, it's like being in a little bubble where we're safe, we're protected, we're around our own, and we control how that area is run. So if places like London and Birmingham go to hell, if we have a village or a town or a series of villages and towns where it's our people and we grow our own produce, we have our own systems, we have our own society, we can still flourish and we can survive these hostile conditions we've been placed within. And the speech was a very heartfelt speech, not just about why we need ethno-nationalism, but why we need to do ethno-nationalism differently, and how I myself, along with many others like Jared Taylor, I mean, he's recently said, you know, we need these ethno-nationalist communities. We can't save the whole of America, he said, but we can save, you know, tens of millions of racially conscious white people. That was my message in Finland. Dan, we spoke at the same stage in Finland. My speech was very well received there. And I said, you know, white Britons may become a minority, but if we're a minority, there's still going to be 35 to 40 million of us. Well, 35 to 40 million white Britons was all it took to conquer the earth and create the biggest empire ever known. So, you know, if we've got 35 to 40 million white Britons and we say, we're not having any of this, we're breaking away and creating our own towns or even cities, what can we achieve? And this is the message of hope I was bringing to the Swedish people. It wasn't a message of hatred. It was a message that, you know, Swedes still have the time to take their destiny into their own hands. And it was a message that I spent a long time working on this. I spent weeks working on this and crafting this because I wanted it to be a genuinely heartfelt message that was personal to both me and hopefully to the people present, and to Dan as well for inviting me. And I'm obviously very disappointed that I can't give that speech.
No. It's very sad that you weren't here. It would have been really nice. But one other thing I was thinking about as you spoke now is another example, sorry to say, from Great Britain. And this is the new Information Something Act. I mean, why we need these places. We need these houses or meeting places, because like this house in Elgarås, where I'm at now, it's ours. It's our rules. It's our people. It is our place. And when they are shutting down internet or making it impossible to use in any sane way, as they are trying now in Great Britain with this Information Act, trying to really
Online Safety Act, yeah.
Online Safety Act, yeah. Really strangling the free speech or even speech at all. People will need to meet and talk, and we have to weed out also those who are either voluntarily working for the government by inciting hatred and inciting terrorism and inciting violence, which they are doing on Telegram and other places, and have people coming to a place where we have positive nationalism. We have this where people want to build something new and get together. And then we need these places that are ours, that we can't be forced to leave. So this is the other aspect. Have you? What's your comments on this act? What do you think will happen?
The Online Safety Act is already enforced. It is happening. The censorship is happening. But I want to say something here about a speech I gave a number of years ago. Back when I formed Patriotic Alternative, I stated all the way back then in about 2019, and I was saying it before it, all of these wonderful YouTube channels, Facebook pages, etc., can be shut down with a click of a button. I said they are very, very vulnerable. And not only are they vulnerable, most people in the chat, you don't know who they are. You can see the names, you can see the avatars, but you wouldn't be able to say, well, this person is really, James Smith, and this person is Julie Bird, and they're now going to meet up and talk and take things into the real world. And I said, that makes the community very vulnerable, because if these YouTube channels and community pages are taken down through some, interference by big capitalist organizations like Google, or by governments through acts like the Online Safety Act, all these communities will be shattered and no one will know how to find each other again. And I said that at the time, and I said, that's why we need Patriotic Alternative. That's why we need these real life groups, so that we all register together. We have each other's emails, our phone numbers. We've got ways to keep in touch. And I made a big impassioned talk about it at the time, saying that we have to transition from online chats into real world activities and communities if we're to achieve anything. And I think my message is one of the reasons I'm so heavily censored today, because there are many people who are allowed to talk online, and there has been a bit of a relaxation of the speech laws, but it's generally that speech laws are relaxed So to allow people to let off steam, the minute you start saying, well, it's all right letting off steam on X and YouTube, but let's get organized, the ban hammer comes down. And the thing they appear to fear the most is genuine ethno-nationalist communities that reach out and help people through charitable work, through community outreach, through legal advocacy, because that is the nexus of a successful ethnic group, just as it has been so successful for, say, the Muslim community in Britain. If you look at the Muslim community in Britain, they cluster together, they know each other, they worship at the same mosques, they own the community centres, they homeschool their children in large groups. They have a very tight-knit community. So it's not a matter of wandering around in small groups, putting out leaflets, trying to convince people of the way to go. They simply call a community meeting and everyone votes in the same way. And that kind of power is so much more effective and creates such immediate change. And that's a power that no white person has, because white communities have been shattered. And in my book, The Fall of Western Man, which you can download for free from my website, I state that what has destroyed white people is more than just mass immigration. It's more than multiculturalism. It's more than feminism. It is a destruction and systematic dismantling of white communities, because once you don't have a community, you are an atomized and isolated individual who can be picked off by the state or hostile ethnic groups from overseas. And we need to regain those communities. And a white community is fundamentally what the establishment fears the most.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I also find it so interesting that all three of us, we are more or less from the same generation. I know Magnus looks very old, but he's not that old. And we all, became active nationalists in our teens. We've grown up in this movement more or less. And we have all come to the same conclusion. We launched the Free Sweden the end of 2017, and we talked about exactly the same things. The need for going offline, preparing for what is happening, creating our own areas and our own meeting places. We also said it, plainly, that Swedes will become a minority in Sweden. It's just mathematical logic. But we will be the largest minority for a long time. And we are still Swedes, we are still white people. That means even if we would become a smaller minority, we would probably still be the best minority. So people are so, as the young people say now, black-pilled about these kind of things. But you just have to face reality and adapt your strategy after what is working. And I also, wasted years of handing out leaflets and running for parliament and so on. And today we try to encourage people, especially young people, to not waste their time, especially on the kind of things that is not only inefficient, but where there's a risk that you maybe get into very violent situations, which would then put you in prison, even if you morally didn't do anything wrong, but because you get put in these kind of situations. Instead, to be creative and constructive and build something that will make your life better, and your family's life better, and your neighborhood's life better. And in this way, you become like like a shining star that will attract people. And because we have always talked about statistics and theories and what will happen in 30 years and so on, it's really hard for the average man to understand that at all, if they care at all. But if you build an alternative and you show what is possible, then people can see that and get attracted to it. In my speech on this Saturday, I improvised a speech because of what happened to you, but I said that what we were doing there on Saturday, it evokes blood memory of what it was like when we didn't live in the multicultural cities that many of us still do today. Because the party was 14 hours long. started already at 12 in the day and went on the whole night, and was filled with games and fun and laughter. And it was like, yeah, this is how good life can be when you're only around people, you know, that you can trust and your own people. You're not afraid to speak your mind. You feel safe everywhere. And this really scares the system, because when this alternative grows and the next Sommarfest, you have 300 people, then you have 500 people, and then you have 1,000 people, and you start to become, you know, like a festival that can be an alternative to like mainstream festivals, but with only Swedish people or only white people. I think you will see a lot of people trying to get in there, because it will be safe, it will be fun, and it will be Swedish.
Do you know what? I hope more than anything that's what happens. And I hope that you guys keep growing, and that all of these communities you're setting up flourish and grow, and many more pop up, because I genuinely believe it's the way forward. And I'll say this, you're so right about the inevitability of what's coming. In the UK, if you look at the demographics, as I said in my speech in Finland, the most diverse demographic in the UK is the demographic that inhabits maternity wards. It's newborns. Newborns are only 55.6% white British. So we will be a minority first and foremost in maternity wards. This, coupled with the vast numbers coming in, you know, every week, every month, every year, it will turn white Brits into a minority, but we will be the biggest and best minority, and we will have a chance for racial rebirth, but only if we form cohesive communities. If we get swallowed up in multicultural towns and cities where we are but individuals surrounded by often hostile communities who hold on to their culture and their ways of life, then we will truly be done for. And what we are doing now is visionary work which paves the way for our people to actually have a future. The work we're doing now, the message that we're spreading, the advocacy, the activism, it might not be at the moment the biggest thing. It might not be at the moment something that people say, oh, well, you're going to take power in the next, 18 months. But it is like sowing a tiny seed that in years to come, that seed will grow and become something bigger that definitely will bear fruit. And that kind of forward planning is what white communities need right now.
We will soon have a break and then continue with the Swedish part of this live stream. Mark, if you have any last message to the viewers on any information where they can follow your work.
I just want to say, if you can follow me, please, on Odyssey, Telegram, and Rumble, that would be really, really appreciated. Look, I'm one of the most I am the most platform man in Europe. So if you can find me on those places, please do follow me, because that's the only way you can find me. I don't ask, I don't sit here with a begging bowl. I just ask if you can follow me. That would be much appreciated. And I finally want to say a massive thanks to you guys for hosting me on here, and thank you for inviting me to Sweden, and thank you so much for helping with my appeal and for fighting for my rights and helping me while I was trapped in that departure lounge. You guys are absolutely brilliant, and I wish you all the best for the future. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I look forward to seeing you again in the future, and one day I hope to set foot on Swedish soil and give that speech in one of your wonderful communities. Thank you so much, guys, and good luck with the rest of the show.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it.
Politiker talar om sparsamhet medan andra lever i nöd. Flyktingströmmen ökar starkt medan andra knappt har bröd. Höjda skatter, mindre lön. Jag är för liten för att bli hörd. Rädd att förlora min identitet. Hatet växer i hemlighet. Utlandsskulden växer snabbt. Vi lever växer i hemlighet. Måste få ett slut. Måste få ett slut. Bidrag betalas ut, men alla vill ha mer. Uppgivenheten sprider sig, är det bara jag som ser? Är det dröm eller verklighet? Vem har svar, är det någon som vet? Rädd att förlora min identitet. Hatet växer i hemlighet. Bostadslösa, arbetslösa ökar lika så. Vi öppnar våra gränser. Hur ska det nu gå? Höjda skatter, mindre lön. Jag är för liten för att bli hörd. Rädd att förlora min identitet. Hatet växer i hemlighet. Måste få ett slut. Måste få ett slut. Talar om sparsamhet medans andra lever i nöd. Flyktingströmmen ökar starkt medans andra knappt har bröd. Höjda skatter, mindre lön. Jag är för liten för att bli hörd. Rädd att förlora min identitet. Hatet växer i hemlighet. Måste få ett slut. Måste få ett slut. Höjda skatter, mindre lön. Jag är för liten för att bli hörd. Rädd att förlora min identitet. Hatet växer i hemlighet. Måste få ett slut. Måste bli ett slut.
Då är vi tillbaka för den andra delen på svenska. Kan du ställa tillbaka hjärnan nu på svenska, Magnus?
I think jag kommer klara by this doing that. Jo då, det ska inte vara några större problem. Nu jäklar kan vi säga precis vad vi tycker och tänker om allting.
Ja, det är jäkligt tråkigt att Mark inte kunde komma in och delta. Jag tror att han hade gillat tillställningen.
Ja, utan tvekan hade han gjort det. Och vi hade fått lite brittisk råstyrka under strongman-tävlingen.
Ja, han hade tränat extra inför strongman-tävlingen.
Ja, jag vet. Jag tror han hade gjort bra ifrån sig på femkampen också. Det hade varit kul. Vissa moment hade jag velat se honom genomföra.
Ja. Vad tänker du annars då om det han sa här, om det han ville prata om och så?
Jag tycker att det talet han hade förberett hade jag gärna velat höra, för att som sagt man känner igen sig. Jag tror att det är någonting som vi alla delar, den här känslan. Sen jag kanske lite lost in translation. Jag tror att han menar det på samma sätt som jag menar. Alltså vi har gjort det vi har gjort för att det var tvunget att vara så. Vi har gått igenom de här sakerna för att det var så. För att annars hade vi inte varit där vi är idag. Så att jag ångrar inte och känner inte det som bortkastad tid. I retroperspektiv nu, med de möjligheter vi har och vad vi gör, så absolut. Men här handlar det mer om det jag bland annat pratade om i mitt tal på Sommarfesten, att vi som det fria Sverige, vi är inte rädda för att titta på det som har varit, bevara det som var bra, men också förändras och förnya med respekt för det som har varit. Och det är det som vi gör och som Mark Collett gör, att gå vidare utifrån de nya omständigheterna. Det var ju så. Dels var vi yngre när vi började. Och yngre är kanske inte särskilt lämpade att leda stora organisationer som har den här typen av verksamheter med liksom, ekonomi och liksom, fastigheter och så vidare. Men också att det fanns en chans då. Det fanns en chans på 80-talet, 90-talet. Hade svenskarna röstat all in på de partierna som var svenska. Samma sak med British Nationalist Party, eller för den delen National Front i Storbritannien. Hade man gjort det, då hade vi sett en helt annan värld. Så att, och jag tror att han menar det på samma sätt som jag tänker det.
Absolut, det tror jag också. Ja, men som sagt, vi kommer ju nu, vi har kontakt med vår advokat och de ska hjälpa oss här och se till att vi kan upphäva den här, det här återreseförbudet, eller vad de kallar det för på svenska. Så kommer kämpa vidare med det och såklart berätta så fort det finns något nytt kring det.
Jag kan säga så här, det. Och där säger jag också till myndigheterna som tittar, mitt livsmål nu är att få Mark Collett till Europa. På ett eller annat sätt. Om det här står sig, på ett eller annat sätt så ska vi få dem till Europa vid något tillfälle. Och vi ska skämma ut hela den byråkratiska EU-gränspolisen fullständigt genom att få in honom i Europa och köra honom runt land och rike och europeiska länder och rike kring. För att han ska
en sån här påvbil med sån här skottsäkert glas så får han åka runt och vinka överallt bara.
Något ska vi lösa. För att det här ska inte stå. Det här är pinsamt, det är åt helvete och det är så...
Men det är också
gjort, alltså.
Det är inte bara ovärdigt, det är liksom, jag menar, som man säger, han är aldrig dömd för något brott.
Nej.
Och han kom såklart inte hit med uppsåt att begå något brott heller. Han kom för att delta på liksom en väldigt social sommarfest liksom och sådär. Och han liksom, vi har inte dolt någonting. Vi har varit helt öppna och transparenta. Vi har lämnat över liksom våra namn och personnummer till gränspolisen som kontaktpersoner. Vi har gjort allt som kan tänkas göra. Liksom, ha kvitton på bokningar av hotell, allt sånt där. Ändå väljer de att göra så här. Och det finns ju en annan sak med det här. Det är ju att vi har ju valt att med det fria Sverige gå en annan väg än många andra nationella tidigare har gjort och vara liksom helt transparenta. Vi har ingen hemlig agenda. Jag vet att folk med hemlig agenda också säger det. Men vi säger 100% vad vi gör, varför vi gör det, vad som är målet med det. Vi är också väldigt tydliga med att människor ska hålla sig borta ifrån våld, självklart terrorism eller vad man nu liksom vill kalla det för, allt sånt här. Och den typen av retorik. Att vi behöver vara uppbyggliga, konstruktiva. Vi uppmanar unga människor att liksom satsa på sin utbildning eller på sin liksom familj, bygga upp sig själva, inte liksom lägga livet slänga bort det på den här frustrationen som man självklart känner när man är ung framförallt. Liksom när allt det här bubblar inom en, det som vi kände. Utan att faktiskt göra något konstruktivt av sina liv och vara en positiv förebild i sitt område. Alternativt flytta till de områden där vi redan etablerar oss. Och vi har varit väldigt tydliga med det här. Varför vi gör det och hur vi gör det. Men ändå blir nu är det ju Mark som drabbas i första hand här, men det är liksom oss som ska besöka, behandlade på det här sättet. Ändå blir vi liksom kallade för delvis våldsbejakande, eller vad de nu kallar det för. Det fria Sverige har alltså existerat i snart 8 år och aldrig varit inblandade i någon som helst våldsamhet.
Nej.
Alltså inte ens okej. Jo, en av våra samlingar i Lund 2018 blev överfallen av maskerade vänsterextremister.
Just så de tog sig in i lokalen där folk...
Jag minns inte exakt detaljerna för jag var tyvärr inte på plats. Det var
och då, ärligt talat Dan, då var det vissa utav arrangörerna på plats som använde våld tillbaka för att freda sig när de blev attackerade och för att skydda människor så ställde de sig i vägen och använde våld för att försvara sig. Det kanske är det som man åsyftar när man skriver de här sakerna om oss. Så jag måste bara lägga till, jag ska läsa ur det dokumentet som Mark Collett fick. Bara för att förstå hur sinnessjuk den här regimen ändå är. Då skriver de: ses alltså Colletts eget beteende utgör ett sådant verkligt, faktiskt och tillräckligt allvarligt hot mot ett grundläggande samhällsintresse som avses enligt EU-rätt. Hans eget beteende.
Hans beteende och kommande agerande i landet bedöms utgöra ett verkligt, faktiskt och tillräckligt allvarligt hot mot ett grundläggande samhällsintresse.
De är ju fullständigt sjuka. Och du säger med den kliniska innebörden av ordet. Det är inte bara att jag tycker de är sjuka i huvudet. Det är ett patologiskt sjukligt sätt att tänka från regimen. När man har den här typen. Samtidigt som det släpps in. Och vi var inne på det. Du har de här, inte köttbullen, förlåt. Utan jordgubben och hallonet. Och de som alltså befinner sig utomlands. Som vi vill ha tillbaka. De ska vi ha utlämnade. Vi ska köra hem, vad var det, 25 000 svenskar från Gazaremsan. Vi har IS-återvändande terrorister. Alltså det står slag i slag med den typen av människor. De är inte ett hot mot de grundläggande svenska intressena. Ärligt talat, regimen, ta era förbannade grundläggande värdegrundsintressen och dra åt helvete. För det här är det ni menar med det Sverige ni vill ha. De här poliserna i uniform, de vill ha hit våldtäktsmän och terrorister och mördare från andra delar av landet, för de släpps in. Men de vill inte ha hit en familjefar som aldrig har begått ett brott i sitt liv och som pratar gott om Europa, den europeiska människan, som vill att svenskar ska få leva tryggt och ha det bra. Det vill ni inte ha. Ni är avskum, ni är förrädare. Det är fan ta mig det värsta man kan tänka sig, den här typen av agerande. Och det visar så tydligt vad den svenska regimen har för, ja, den är inte så hemlig längre, den agendan, men det är er agenda. Och vi kommer göra allt vi kan för att se till att det finns ett bättre alternativ för svenskar som vill ha ett bättre alternativ. Och det är allt vi vill. Vi vill vara för oss själva, leva vår kultur, leva vårt arv, ha trevligt, ha fester, ha gemenskap, kunna berätta och föra vidare det vi tycker. Men det är det som är det stora hotet mot er. Fy fan.
Mm. Ja, det är upprörande. Och vi har ju nu pratat om det och vi kommer få återkomma till ämnet om Collett såklart också när vi vet mer angående den juridiska strid som vi nu såklart hjälper Mark med. Men om vi lämnar det åt sidan så var ju den här sommarfesten oerhört lyckad. Alltså jag säger ofta att det är lyckat, för det är ofta lyckat. Men som arrangör så vet man ju ofta liksom saker som inte gick som det skulle. Mm. Det finns ofta en hel del sådana, men det kanske inte märks så mycket för besökarna, för de vet inte vad de ska förvänta sig. Den stora saken här är att förutom att Mark inte kom så var det som att allt blev som vi hade föreställt oss.
Absolut. Jag noterar för mig själv att det här är dag 2 då. Jag är fortfarande helt slut. Men jag är inte helt slut för att jag har stressat. Jag är inte helt slut för att jag var tvungen att göra en massa saker för att det var sånt som inte hanns med. Utan jag är helt slut för att jag hade trevligt. För att jag var med och för att jag fick tillfälle att dansa som en tok. Det är därför jag är helt slut. Och det säger någonting om det hela. Vi har alltså som vi var inne på efter förra sommarfesten. Alltså förra, jag vet inte hur man säger. Att vi i princip dagen efter började planera för den här sommarfesten. Vi fick in nytt blod i arrangörsgruppen och de har gjort ett jättejobb. Och det finns en massa små detaljer jag skulle kunna berätta om hur Excel-dokument växer fram och hur man planerar saker och funderar kring de här sakerna. Och hur det i sig ger en fantastisk grund att stå på. Jag kan också nämna alla de nya tänkesätt som kom in. Du och jag, vi är ju som vi är och vi har våra idéer. Men här kommer in andra idéer på hur kan vi liksom bygga upp, skapa stämning som ger något annat. Hur kan vi, och så vidare. Och sen har vi haft våra duster, vi har liksom stångats, vi har inte alltid hållit med varandra, men det kom till ett fantastiskt giftermål i det som blev resultatet. Och alltså det jag har hört från folk som var där var att det här var verkligen någonting speciellt. Det fanns en känsla från start som bars med under kvällen till crescendot och det crescendo som du var master architect för och som ställde allt på ända. Jag har bara hört väldigt positiva omdömen.
Mm. Ja, nej, själv är liksom supernöjd med hela evenemanget och nu blev det ju liksom rätt mycket folk ändå. Jag tror att någonstans mellan 130 och 150 totalt. Det var en lång dag. En hel del som bara kom på kvällen, en del som bara var med på dagen. Det var liksom på det sättet också den där festivalkänslan. Av att det liksom plötsligt så bara, nu är den här gruppen här. Och så liksom,
precis.
Den här gruppen människor. Och så att det var... och just att det pågår under så lång tid och att vi har så pass mycket utrymme att vi liksom kan ha en utomhusscen där det sker någonting. Och sen har vi liksom, pågår det folk som spelar liksom biljard och pingis inomhus och några andra som sitter och pratar företagsidéer vid ett bord. Några som spelar schack. Och sen några andra som är nere vid den här marknaden vi hade där det fanns antikviteter och hantverk och potatis och allt möjligt som fanns där. Kläder och allt möjligt från flera olika individer då som bara hade liksom, vi hade lite öppen marknad där och det var ju riktigt häftiga grejer som faktiskt fanns till salu. Så att det var liksom, man kunde gå runt där som i olika stationer blev det. Och jag tror att man ändå under de här då 12-13 timmarna hann med allt. men det fanns att göra liksom. Och sen så jag såg Eva Marie skrev översatt den här att man knöt ännu fler vänskapsband. Jag såg väldigt många, jag såg att de här personerna vet att de har inte träffats förut. Och liksom, man såg att det knöts de här och vi hade ju lite knep också till exempel i femkampen att vi delade upp folk i lag för att få dem att, ja men man kommer ur sin vanliga liksom, krets av vänner och så får man lära känna lite nya. Och vi hade lite andra saker vi gjorde för att underlätta även för den som kanske har lite svårt att ta första steget och säga hej till någon. Att man liksom satte ihop dem och sådär. Jag tycker att det var jättekul. Och jag hade också kul. Det ska inte underskattas.
Jag har hört det från folk i arrangörsgruppen som noterade att inte du heller var stressad eller liksom man var inte som man brukar vara. Det där var en av de sakerna som inte vi utan faktiskt arrangörsgruppen sa vid första mötet jag hade med dem. Då sa de att deras mål var att vi inte skulle behöva jobba någonting i princip. För att vi skulle kunna göra annat. Det vill säga att vara värdar och ta hand om gästerna och finnas till hands för människor.
Ja, och det kan vi bara säga då, för jag tycker det behövs. För jag såg även Marie skrev, ni som arrangör gjorde mycket bra för alltså även om vi har varit inblandade, du framförallt Magnus, jag har inte ens varit med i arbetsgruppen. Däremot har jag fått, när jag stämt av vissa saker med mig och kommit lite önskemål och sånt, så är det ju framförallt andra personer.
Ja, precis.
Som har varit arrangörsgruppen och som gjorde det stora jobbet på fredagen och på lördagen. Och liksom, alltså, så att vi kan, som ansiktena utåt så kan ni få kasta beröm på oss, men det ska egentligen vidare.
Ja, nej, men det ska vidare och flera tittar och tittar nu och vet att de själva är just den gruppen. Och jag kan också säga att det är inte helt enkelt att vara arrangörsgrupp med mig och Dan vid rodret, för att vi tycker mycket och vi är så vana vid att man liksom måste rodda själv. Även om vi alltid haft folk som har varit hjälpsamma och varit med, så har huvudplaneringen alltid vilat på våra axlar och det har blivit på ett visst sätt. Så det är inte helt lätt för oss att släppa taget, och det har varit en del djupa suckar när jag framhärdar i någonting som jag liksom inte riktigt vill släppa, eller jag vill tycka att så här ska vi göra, och sen har man varit tvungen att ändra sig. Så att vi har ju visat prov då, på fantastisk tillmötesgående när det kommer till detta. Och nästa år kanske vi kan till och med släppa dem helt fria.
Nej, ta det lugnt nu.
Vi ska inte ge dem idéer här, inte. In i follan med er. Nej, så att det är riktigt kul. Och nu ska vi bara komma på ett bra sätt att hitta på något kul så att arrangörsgruppen får vara med och festa också. Men det får vi ha en liten egen fest kanske.
Jo, vi får absolut titta på någonting. Och sen blir det ju, till varje sommarfest så har vi ju lagt till nya lager. Det är alltid hänt nya överraskningar, nya grejer som ingen hade räknat med. Och vi får väl ta någon vecka och vila nu. Och sen får vi börja fundera på vad som blir
jag vet inte hur alltså vi börjar närma oss här ballongdansen för att göra liksom något som bryter mot det konventionella. Jag vet inte vad vi ska hitta på nästa gång, för att det som var liksom crescendo den här gången, det var så kul för folk visste inte ens hur de skulle hantera det. Så folk liksom, en del gick ut för att digga på egen hand, för de visste inte riktigt hur de skulle göra. Jag försökte ju visa tillsammans med några gamla goda vänner hur man gör.
Det var ett bra gäng som höll igång.
Det var det verkligen. Vilka tappra själar. Några under en hel timme.
Och vi kan ju också bara konstatera då, vi valde det här året att inte göra ett videoreportage. Vi hade inte ens fotograf på plats. Och det var ett medvetet val. Och ibland kommer det komma videoreportage från vissa evenemang vi har. Men det kommer inte vara ofta. Och vi vill helt enkelt skapa en känsla av att saker sker här och nu. Man måste leva i nuet så att säga. Så, fånga liksom själva stunden. Det är alldeles för många som betraktar sin värld genom en skärm. Inte bara att de sitter hemma och kollar på saker bara online. Utan du vet, på konserter idag. Alla står med mobiltelefon och filmar och tittar liksom på där för att se att det får en bra vinkel på filmningen. Och vi är delvis en motreaktion på det. Och ibland behöver man göra lite foton och lite videoreportage för att ge en liten glimt av vad som pågår på våra tillställningar. Men framförallt är det för dem som är på plats. Och det är likadant den här gången. Så att jag kan säga att ni missade det som har beskrivits som motorcykelgrejen.
Jag trodde.
Den grejen kommer ni få fundera länge på vad det var och vad det var ni missade. För att det var en skrattfest. Och det var människor som du kanske inte trodde men som bjöd på sig själva på ett sätt som bara kan ske på tillställningar där alla litar på varandra.
Precis. Litar på varandra och vet i grunden att här är vi liksom välvilligt inställda till varandra och till det vi gör. Och det var en sak som jag tog upp i mitt tal som ni heller inte kommer få höra, som enligt många varit av de bästa på lång tid. Där jag just tar upp det att det är det handlar om. Och jag tyckte att det märktes så väl. Jag skrev ju talet innan det här skedde och talet levererades efter alla dessa upptåg. Men innan det crescendot då. Men just den här känslan av att här är vi faktiskt, här kan vi tillåta oss. För att man behöver göra det. Det har tagit mig 40 plus år att liksom komma fram till, och det med benägen hjälp av vänner som tycker om mig och tycker att men det här finns det mer att jobba på. Här finns det lite av den här diamanten att slipa till. Men att man kan verkligen få tillfälle att göra det. För när ska vi kunna göra det? Jo, vi kan göra det i en miljö som är fullständigt trygg. Jag menar, jag la min telefon på något bord och den ligger ju kvar. Och det är också det här, jag brukar ta upp det ofta på våra evenemang. Alltså, när man ser unga kvinnor som kommer dit, eller för den delen äldre kvinnor, som också kan känna den här tryggheten i att här kan jag få ha kul utan att behöva riskera det jag måste riskera på krogar och nattklubbar, att folk, vi vet vilka folk jag oftast åsyftar, men också andra, liksom att man tar sig friheter eller beter sig sunkigt. Det finns inte här. Det finns inte. Och liksom, du behöver inte som man komma dit och känna att du måste liksom vara på något visst sätt, utan man kan faktiskt vara och ha trevligt och vara väldigt trygg i att det här är en plats där vänner träffas. Även vänner som jag inte vet vilka de är. Men att det finns det bandet. Det är det som, när man pratar med människor också, är ofta det absolut viktigaste. Att man känner en trygghet. Att äntligen få släppa loss i ett sammanhang som är tryggt och vänskapligt. Så att det där, och det gäller ju inte bara sommarfesten, men det gäller i alla våra evenemang. Men det här är väl det som slår högst på det sättet.
Jo, sommarfesten är ju ett speciellt evenemang för att det är fokus på just festlighet. Liksom från, alltså med alla lekar och allt sånt här. Liksom. Det blir lite annat än när vi har mer, ibland liksom politiskt tunga evenemang med liksom konferenser och liknande. Eller även om du går till som förfädernas minne, som är en högtid och en ceremoni och liksom mycket tradition i det. Det är jättekul, liksom trevligt på andra sätt, och vi har ju fortfarande den här känslan av att vi litar på varandra, såklart. Men just det här att släppa loss över, alltså en sån här hel dag och hel kväll tillsammans är det är något väldigt speciellt, och jag hoppas att om det blir en sommarfest nästa år, vilket jag antar att det blir, men det är så långt kvar så jag orkar inte tänka på det just nu, så tar man chansen att delta. Och vill man, så ska man såklart komma på andra evenemang innan det också. Nu har ju vi en höst här framför oss där vi ska ut i landet. Vi ska ju runt omkring i hela Sverige till slut och träffa medlemmar. Det finns information på medlemsforumet om detta. Så då kommer det vara, om man inte har träffat oss eller kanske andra medlemmar i det område där man själv bor, så kommer ju det vara ett perfekt tillfälle till den här första kontakten. Vilket kanske gör det ännu enklare att sen kanske samåka till större evenemang i Elgarås och i Skåne och kanske något annat hus som vi öppnar nästa år, vem vet.
Men precis, för att, det här är det värt att tänka på det Mark tar upp. Vi har ju tjatat om det, men han tar ju upp samma sak helt utan vår hjälp. Han har kommit fram till precis samma sak. Vikten av att bygga den här typen av gemenskapshus, hubbar, möjligheter. Och jag menar, det finns mycket kvar att göra på den fronten, men vi har det. Och det gör att här kan vi dagarna innan, veckorna innan, månaderna innan, året innan planera för och skapa det här. Och vi gör det kontinuerligt under året som sker, och samma sak i Skåne. Och här gäller det ju att man träder in och hjälper till. Framförallt att stötta med husfonden om man inte kan komma till huset, men även om man bevistar huset, att hjälpa till med husfonden för att se till så att de här platserna liksom kan inte bara finnas kvar utan också utvecklas. Jag menar, ärligt talat, jag vet inte, var det så smart det här vi beslutade om? Jag vet inte. Vi fick ju knivskarp konkurrens. Alltså allt vi gjorde när vi skulle vara inne i stora salen och så fick ju knivskarp konkurrens av eldgropen. Jag börjar undra, den där eldgropen, alltså den, alltså vilken alltså en samlingsplats i samlingsplatsen, det var ju fantastiskt.
Ja, det är ju alltså på fredagen blev ju den nya eldplatsen klar. Och den användes ju redan på fredag kväll för de som var tidiga. Och sen på lördag kväll, och men det är klart, en stor eld och liksom sittplatser runt omkring, det drar till sig folk.
Ja, visst.
Så är det.
Ja.
Nej, det var nog en bra idé som jag inte alls var inblandad i. Så att, det är upp till de andra. Jag varken grävde, murade eller hade idén från början. Så att det har andra haft.
Vi ska ha 5 eldgroper nästa år.
det är lugnt.
Men däremot så kommer, det kan jag säga till er som ni hugade lyssnare som tänker, va? Nästa år, Dan, det lät nästan som att han är skeptisk. Arrangörsgruppen är redo, vi kommer ha en debriefing här i dagarna, och sen så är vi beredda att om ledningen för organisationen så fattar beslut, kommer vi att direkt börja arrangera Sommarfesten 2026.
Ja, det låter lovande. Jag tänker att den här veckan, jag är tillbaka i normalt arbetstempo nu. Jag vet att du har lite saker kvar att uträtta här de kommande veckorna utanför arbetet. Men jag tänker att den här veckan blir det väl åtminstone ett till program, va?
Det tycker jag definitivt.
Ett som inte handlar om sommarfesten då, utan där vi går in på lite saker som har hänt i världen och i Sverige i övrigt.
Annat. Ja, jag hörde att det var kärnvapenubåtar på väg mot Sovjet. Heter de,
mot Sovjet, ja. Håll det där.
Ja, det hör jag. Har lite återhämta mig här efter sommarfesten. Det brukar ofta bli så.
Jag har gjort en tidsresa till 89. Liksom.
Ja, jag vet inte. Jag var rädd att de hade invaderat Blekinge nu. Låg utanför Karlskrona. Nej då, men men det finns ju mycket som har hänt. Även om sommaren är en sån där dödtidsmånad mycket. Men det finns att prata om, och det ska vi göra. Om inte annat så finns det annat att prata om som vi behöver liksom stånka igång den här blågula maskinen igen och göra oss redo för resten av året.
Så är det. Och har du inte redan gjort det, så är det här en bättre tid än någonsin att faktiskt lösa ditt medlemskap i det fria Sverige. Gå in på medlemsforumet, börja nätverka med andra människor och gör dig redo för höstturnén när vi åker runt i landet. Kom på evenemang och se till att bli en del av det här nätverket av människor som förgrenar sig åt alla möjliga håll runt om i landet just nu. Så för att vi måste förstå det som vi pratar lite om Online Safety Act och så vidare. Det här vi gör nu, många av er tittar på det här på YouTube. Det här kan vara vår sista YouTube-sändning eftersom att Mark var med. Han är ju avstängd härifrån. De här kanalerna kommer inte finnas för alltid. Vi kommer inte alltid kunna nå ut på samma sätt som vi gör idag. Absolut, folk kan prata VPN och krypterade appar och så vidare, men det är en helt annan sak. Du måste vara med och bygga gemenskapen och nätverket utanför internet. Antingen där du bor nu eller flytta dit där de här nätverken redan finns. Det är de två alternativen du har. Antingen bygger du där du står eller så flyttar du dit där vi redan står. Det är de vägarna du har att gå. Och inte göra dig beroende utav att få information via internet och så vidare. Det finns på medlemsforumet i Kunskapsbanken så finns det flera guider till färdigheter du bör ha koll på, hur du organiserar dig lokalt och så vidare. Så att in på medlemsforumet på forum.friasvenskar.se och klicka in i Kunskapsbanken. Du ser den när du är inloggad med ditt medlemskonto och ta del utav de guiderna där.
Så är det.
Ska vi ta avrunda där då och tacka för visad uppmärksamhet och vi hoppas att ni får en fortsatt skön sommar, men vi är tillbaka med minst en sändning i veckan, förmodligen 2-3 sådär nu när liksom det börjar stånka igång igen. Vi kommer snart komma ut med prenumerant-exklusiva program igen på fredagar. Så se till att bli podcastprenumerant om du inte redan är det, då stöttar du också vårt arbete på det sättet. Vill du stödja Det Fria Sveriges arbete så har du detfriasverige.se/donera och såklart lös medlemskap inne på detfriasverige.se. Tack för idag och på återhörande.
Försöker alltid sin makt, men vi står troget kvar. De försöker med våld och med bankens pakt, men det fria Sverige har ett enat svar. Vi kommer aldrig ge upp. Vi kommer aldrig sluta slåss. För svenskarnas framtiden hänger på oss. Vi är de första av imorgon. Vi ska läka moder Sveas sår. Vi är de första av imorgon. Vi är ej de sista av igår. Vi är de första av imorgon. Likt ett brödraskap av stål. Vi är de första av imorgon.